Good morning. I'm Ant Moss. I'm the Head of Digital Solutions at Telefonica O2 Business, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you today to our O2 and Microsoft Modern Workplace webinar with special guest Stuart Lancaster. So, as we've reached stage month 8 of the pandemic earlier this week, I think we probably all agree that the way we live and work has pretty much changed forever. And in our session today, we're going to look at how, as leaders, we can create a positive workplace culture and really enable our teams. And we're going to hear from Microsoft some insight and some statistics from themselves. And from myself from O2, we're going to look at how we can move forward and make a different workplace culture for our people, giving them access to the solutions they need and the information. And then we're going to hear from leadership expert Stuart, who's going to take us through what it really means to get the best from your teams and how we can all work better together. So let me make a start and introduce the panel today. So I'm Ant Moss, as mentioned, Head of Digital Solutions at Telefonica. I'm going to be your host and moderator today. I'm going to be guiding us through the next 60 minutes or so, and I'll be sharing my views and insights on how technology has changed and how we can enable teams and look at security as well. And joining me is Claire Holly from Microsoft. So Claire, if I may pass to you to just quickly introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for having me. I'm super excited to be talking to you all today. My name is Claire, as Ant mentioned. I am the Modern Workplace and Security Lead for the Media and Telco business here in the UK, which means I lead a team of salespeople and technical people around the whole modern workplace conversation. I'm going to be talking today about the culture of remote work. Thanks, Ant.
Super, thanks, and thanks for joining us today, Claire. And also joining us, a familiar face to rugby fans out there, and with impressive trophy cabinet, which sadly we couldn't match with our other speakers, is Stuart Lancaster. Stuart, if I could quickly pass to you to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, Stuart Lancaster here, in the conference room at UCD in Dublin, home of Leinster Rugby. So this is where I coach, and I will look forward to sharing my lessons I've learned, I guess, during my career as a coach, and hopefully how they can apply to business.
Fantastic, and thank you to both my speakers, and really looking forward to hearing more from you both. So without further ado, if I can pass over to Claire, who's going to take us through modern workplace and security as a role leading enterprise.
Thanks, Ant. So to set the scene and start talking about the culture of remote work, I wanted to briefly ground us in the conversation of culture. Culture leads us to find ways to help people do ordinary things and sometimes extraordinary things, and we all know the age-old saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And hence, when we poll organisational leaders across the UK, culture is at the top of the list when we talk about barriers for digital transformation. And that was pre-COVID. It's now imperative for every person in every organisation to think about how they contribute to the culture of their organisation in the new world of remote work. So, before I get into the meat of it, I wanted to give you a very quick, brief synopsis of the cultural transformation that Microsoft have been on, as I think it's relevant to how Microsoft here view the culture of remote work and how I approach the conversation. Because it wasn't that long ago that Microsoft was on the world stage being told that they weren't relevant, that they'd missed the mark, that they weren't going to be able to be relevant for the rest of whatever they thought the future was. The world was changing, and obviously it continues to change, and it was changing fast, and Microsoft really needed to change with it. We needed a compelling reason. We needed to find out who we were, why we were, and think about what the world would be like without us in it. We needed essentially to rediscover our soul. We needed to set ourselves a challenge, and a challenge worth the effort. So in 2014, enter, stage left, Satya Nadella, Microsoft's third CEO. And he set about working with his leadership team to drive a new mission for Microsoft, drive new values. And here on the screen, you can see the Microsoft mission that prevails today: empower every person and organisation on the planet to achieve more. a very enduring mission, even though I am obviously fairly biased. We were really focused on thinking about how we develop a culture that people want to come and work at, so that we can attract diverse talent, diverse thought, so that we can essentially reflect the community we were seeking to enable and serve. We were becoming that whole concept of thinking about that we wanted people to be who they were, their full selves at work. Come as you are, do what you love. We transitioned from that sort of fixed mindset to a growth mindset, that arrogant old Microsoft, as we were known in terms of the sort of know-it-all culture, to the learn-it-all culture. And that journey that we were on, by the way, we are no way declaring victory here, absolutely not. It's something that's ever evolving and continuing on that horrible word, the journey, but we are really, really conscious of that. It absolutely has helped us this year, sure, become the first sort of fastest digital responders out there. But it's also helped us stop, think and pause about the future and how we could play a part in that and drive a different way and support every organisation and person on the planet to do more, but more on that shortly. So as I said, I'm part of the Modern Workplace team here in the UK, but I'm part of a much bigger ecosystem across the whole of worldwide Microsoft. And we've been building the Modern Workplace platform for a number of years now. And we've always constantly thinking about the Microsoft mission. And believe me when I say we do genuinely wake up every morning thinking about how we can drive our service, our solution to enable every person and every organisation on the planet to do more. So therefore, we are absolutely obsessed with this whole concept around being loved by users, but trusted by IT. So meeting users where they want to be, but giving IT and leaders of organisations that peace of mind that their IP and their data and their security and compliance is still top of mind. We've been out there bringing together hardware and software, trying to help our clients and customers think about moving away from that traditional model to today's model, where it looks very different, right, from the corporate footprint that was sort of, and what we were trying to protect 20 years ago. We now work on the edge, some of us more so than others, but it was all about thinking about producing a platform that security is built in, not bolt on. We spend about £1 billion on security every year. We're the most attacked organisation on the planet. We were always thinking about how we can build that rich insight into our products so that there is no trade-off between productivity and security. And we were doing pretty well. We thought we were listening, we were keeping up with what people wanted and the requirements. We were listening to universities, young minds, clients, ourselves, partners, and then the watershed moment happened. And as our CEO, Satya Nadella, recently said, we've seen 2 years of digital transformation happen in 2 months, and modern work has been at the centre of that. Perhaps this illustration on the screen right now resonates with a few of us on the call. This was drawn by one of my cyber defence apprentices using her Surface Pen and her Surface Pro. But it's a familiar setting that many of us have seen over the past 8 months. And as Ant mentioned earlier, we have all faced unexpected personal challenges. Our organisations have faced unexpected IT challenges. Overnight, we saw the world transition to remote work. But I would argue that we actually transitioned to crisis-induced working from home, and that many of us are not actually experiencing the value of remote work. Because when remote work is intentionally structured, it can be an incredible enabler, providing individuals with the space to spend more time with their friends, family, communities, and to have a net positive impact on society. We did a good job, right? We were agile in our response. Everybody across the world stepped up and really did deliver. I mean, here in the UK, Microsoft worked with our partner network to enable the NHS to transform over a few days 1.2 million users so that the NHS could provide remote care and continue the fantastic service that we know and love. But as an organisation, Microsoft suddenly realised that we needed to slow down and speed up and reach back to our culture. We'd seen that this rapid shift had really illustrated the intersection between technology and company culture. People were not feeling connected or collaborative with their peers. We were doing okay, like sort of working in our tribes, staying in our lanes. Productivity was not a problem. And in fact, there's a study out there that recognises that across the UK, we were working 25% harder and longer, which incidentally equates to about 7 weeks worth of additional annual leave. But business leaders were highlighting that there was a lack of innovation. In a BCG study recently, it was cited that innovation dropped by about 10% overnight. We were missing access to data and information. We couldn't scale, we weren't sharing knowledge. We could also see the impact on mental health, teams fatigue, and people having the opportunity to learn. So Microsoft made some moves. We had some tactical ideas. So we collaborated with Headspace. We've worked with LinkedIn to build into the platform, the learning platform. We surfaced up analytics for personal use so people could absolutely work towards their goals on their own terms using data-driven insight. We also thought about raising up analytics to organisational leaders so that they could make better data-driven insight and do more with their teams. But we also started thinking about the future and the culture of working in the brave new world. And at Microsoft, and to many, this is going to be the hybrid working culture of the future. We are challenging ourselves to think about how we can be an ally to all in the next way of working. 65% of the UK workforce are now saying that they intend to work from home more than 1 day a week, even after restrictions are lifted. So we needed to think about the meeting life cycle, about collaboration, thinking about how we are an ally to all, whether you're in the room, out the room, thinking about people that have care responsibilities or are actually just off seeing the world and having more life experiences. We had to think about how we enabled people to adopt a more self-service and self-learning mentality so that remote work and hybrid work could flourish. We had to think about how we scale and share knowledge to remove that constant virtual tap on the shoulder, which sort of breaks away from the flow and the innovation styles that most of us all look to and strive to have throughout our day. We had to think about that inclusive meeting where how could we bring that feeling of togetherness back into our organisations and our clients so that they could absolutely push their culture forward and make sure that everyone felt included. We built a lot of accessibility into our products. We're absolutely obsessed. Everything has to be accessibility friendly. So whether that be closed captions or live transcripts or shadow presenters on a Surface Hub. There's so much more in there, especially sort of the whole concept of immersive reading and things like that. But so in summary, and because I think I'm running fast out of time, the culture of remote work, or I'd rather say the culture of hybrid work, is an ever-evolving transformation. And it's going to be tough. We don't all have the luxury of stopping and pausing our businesses to think about how we restructure in this new way of working. But the opportunity is phenomenal and it's going to be worth it. Think about the opportunity we now have to dive into diverse talent pools that were never accessible to us before. Gaining knowledge for teams around all around the world, from our customers, from our partners, a different way of collaborating and tapping into that fruitful and rich environment. The opportunity to be an ally to all, to learn more from each other, learn more about each other, walk in each other's shoes more often, leave work and spend more time in our communities and societies to make a difference, and then think about bringing all of that vibrant experience back into our organisation so that we can have a really tremendous thought around how we can drive our own cultures and be really responsible for them and to play an active part. I'm so excited that we're actually partnering here today with O2 and seeing how they're going to build their modern work practice and how they can help their clients, their partners and their community drive and strive in the new way of modern work, with hybrid working. So I absolutely I'm keen for some questions. If you would like to put some questions in the chat, please do reach out. But if anybody does have any questions at a later date, I'm also available on LinkedIn.
Who do you want to send it to?
And my watch is keen that you also contribute as well. But thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I look forward to the third partnership with the O2 moving forward.
Wonderful, thank you, Claire. Great presentation. As Claire mentioned, please put any questions you have in chat, and we'll continue throughout the course of the session to answer those. There are a couple actually, Claire. I just want to pick one of these, if I may. What do you see as the biggest blocker to adopting remote working is for organisations?
So there's a number, and it is essentially culture, right? It is that piece around how are leaders in organisations and managers thinking about giving their community, their teams, their employees time to think about being sort of innovative and working on their own terms. So I think the biggest blocker is sort of that whole sort of our old culture must fit the new culture. Culture has to evolve, expectations have to evolve. And we have to change with the fast evolving world and the new talent that's coming into our organisations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think if anything, the pandemic has shown us that evolution is ever present, and there is a need to act, which I think most of us have done. Claire, that's really useful. Thank you ever so much, and great to have you join us today and give your thoughts and views, and really look forward to working with you more in the future as well. So the next session is actually over to me. So as per the introduction, I manage the digital solution teams across Telefonica O2 Business, and today I'm going to talk to you about keeping users secure and productive. We're going to touch on some of the similar points here, but I think they all are relevant and act as timely reminders as to what we need to do next. So I think if we look at our current working patterns, we've turned to our mobile as our go-to device. After all, we've suggested for some time that mobile devices are the remote controls to our lives. But we are working in very different environments. If we look at how we're all joining this session today, most of us from our lockdown home offices. And as mentioned earlier, as we hit month 8 of this lockdown, I think the novelty is beginning to wear off a little as well. I'm not sure we quite feel that this is new and exciting anymore. It's kind of a part of what we have to do, and we must adapt and evolve our working practices and our teams practice and ways as well to accommodate. I think a number of us are comfortably dialing in from home offices with dedicated quiet spaces. Others are finding more challenging environments, so shared accommodation, or families who are also working from home, or maybe that's childcare projects, and suggesting that actually, while we see a huge uptake in home working, this might not work for everyone. We've got to look at both sides. And staying productive is not just about location, it's about looking at the new ways of working and the policies that we'll set as well. What do we do about DSE in this remote world? What do we do about our brand and image? What do we do about the clothes we wear when we turn up to a conference call? If we're looking at longer remote working as a journey, we're going to have to adapt and adjust our processes as well. And Claire shared earlier as well, if we do consider the return, what does the office of the future look like? As we edge closer to a vaccine, the general acceptance here is that this is one of permanent change, that the last 8 months are going to change the way we work forever. And if we look at generally around 35% where people will actually return, with 65% actually choosing to enjoy and continue to enjoy that flexibility that technology now affords them. And if we have more space, if 70% of our people, 65%, whatever, are not going to come back to the office all the time, when they do come, what does that office look like? Are these going to be more collaboration and open spaces? Will we even take a laptop with us? Or instead, will we turn up and with our devices and interact and plan and socialise? How will the office change? Or will these locations actually become more innovation zones? Will they be full of technology and allow us to communicate in ways that we perhaps haven't tried or even considered yet? Or will this simply just be a quiet space? Will we flood the office when the children are on school holidays to try and get some peace and quiet and get some work done? But whatever the future holds, what it does mean for us as business leaders is that we need to cater for a new type of normal. And sorry to use the word new normal again and again, but it's a reality of what we're going to have to plan for. Users are expecting more from us. They've turned to their personal devices and flexible working equipment, and the consumerization of IT has proved the case that they can do more from the devices. And in turn, they're going to look to us as providers of those solutions for far more. They're going to look for access to information regardless of their role, and they're going to want that on any device, and they're going to want to be able to access the data that they need to do their job, as well as the applications. And ultimately as well, they're going to want it across any type of connectivity. This shouldn't be around the office providing that secure environment. They want to work from anywhere, and the last 8 months have proved that we can do it. So how do we prepare for this? How do we provide a consistent and secure user experience? And how do we take the next steps to this flexible working utopia if such an end game is realistic? And during this time, it's going to be challenges. Challenges will continue. As our environment evolves, so too will the threats and the risks. And the pandemic itself has presented a huge number of challenges on many organisations. New threats have emerged. We've had people taking shots at us when we were at our most vulnerable. Our focus was to deploy people, get people at home, working, continue our business practices and keep business and economy moving. Yet we faced increased, more sophisticated phishing attacks, DDoS attacks on our websites and key services. And these attackers are not deterred. They're continuing to evolve, and we'll continue to see evolution of those threats and risks. And the pandemic aside, the digital workplace was already evolving and was already quite tricky. The pandemic, for me, tested our systems to the absolute max. It tested security, it tested the processes and systems we had in place, whether that be a VPN or whether it was capacity on a conference bridge. We really did test it to the hilt. But what else do we need to consider? IT has grown in its complexity, not just because of the pandemic, but because of flexible working solutions and the plethora of different applications which are available to make us work more efficiently. The trusted network is perhaps no longer enough. Do we have to look at protecting beyond the perimeter and beyond a trusted environment to a zero trust outlook? And as we look at assets that were previously connected to the environment, they're constantly leaving now, whether that be bring your own device policies, work from home, or mobile application with software as a service. Things are changing. And also, furthermore, attackers are shifting their focus in terms of the threat to the points of weakness. They're looking at more advanced and sophisticated phishing attacks, and often leaving us as security teams perhaps overwhelmed with the diversity and tonicity of their approaches. And for me, while we're setting up our defences as the tools and the applications and the security protocols that we'll need, we've got to work closer with our people as well. The saying is that you don't need to break the door down to get in, you just need somebody to open it. And if we think about the threats that are increasing and impacting our people, it's very much about how do we inform them, how do we educate our people, and give them confidence to actually call out if they feel that there's been a breach, and give them the support to really help them spot them early on anyway. And as the threats evolve and as solutions evolve, as we saw there from Claire's presentation, you know, the Teams product alone is continually evolving and new services are there. You know, all of this will be backed up by robust security solutions, but we need to make sure that they are not just at an application level, that they are across our organisation, and that security is almost as important as the share price to any organisation. We need to introduce new aspects of security, such as biometric multi-factor authentication. We need to embrace the advancement and exponential growth of AI technology as well, and look at how that can help us just minimize the threats and the risks in the first place and deal with impacts and breaches on our behalf when they should happen. And also look at how automation can help us really scale that support and bolster our defences further. So we've considered a huge number of points already there, and we have fairly limited time today across mine and Claire and Stuart's presentation. But for me, there are a number of things that we need to consider as next steps. And I hate to use the word journey, but it very much is, in my opinion, we are on this journey of transforming to this true digital workplace. We've already put a number of solutions in place. I think the insight gathered from the conversations I've had during lockdown with the boards of many organisations is that a massive services were deployed. We scaled everything up very quickly, and now we need to actually pause, take stock of those, and actually look at what are the next stages. Do we have the right systems amongst that massive technology that are going to give us the building blocks for growth, the building blocks for true flexible working, but also with security at the core? And how do we get there? What's the steps? Well, at O2, apologies for the busy slide here, but we look at this in 6 different areas. These are real considerations such as the flexibility. The location shouldn't matter. Can we co-collaborate on documents easily and sufficiently? And living on Teams, we do a great job of that. But how else can we be more supportive of access to our people and the data that they need? We mentioned moving to a zero trust environment and putting security absolutely at the priority of our services moving forward. Putting data, consolidating data into single data sets and integrating that and bringing AI to the core of working with that data and using far more intelligent data to help us, not just internally, but also to service our customers better as well. We've got multiple systems, multiple endpoints, multiple things to manage. It's about bringing those things together. And finally, for me, the most important thing is evolving the way that we communicate with our people as well, and how people communicate amongst each other. Email is probably the biggest drainer of our time, but actually we can do an awful lot more in co-collaborating on documents with notifications and chat-based services at the back of it. So to close my session today, as mentioned, we have limited time today, and we really appreciate you taking time to join us. But I want to close my session with an open invitation. We'd like you to spend an hour with our dedicated teams of specialists and solution architects, and an open invitation will be offered to you all as you've joined this session, to share a virtual coffee with them and talk. And this is about any topic, any service, or just for general advice. When the pandemic hit on the 24th of March, the phone rang, and we played a key role in supporting our customers through some of the decisions that they had to make in pretty short space of time. For us, that's not over. We need to do more. We need to help organisations plan the next stage of that journey. And we really look forward to working with you on that. As mentioned, we can share a virtual coffee, or we can be slightly more digital, and we can join you with an innovation online brainstorming session just to talk through what some of the topics are that are of concern. So I'll pause there as a close to see if there are any questions coming in. We'll just take a quick look at chat. Okay, there is another one from Microsoft actually. Claire, if I could come back to you, I could probably offer an O2 view of this as well. But what's the Microsoft policy for home working look like?
So at the moment here in the UK, well, it's been a worldwide policy that's come out. We are now officially all mobile workers. So everybody across the whole of Microsoft, if they can work from home, are mobile workers now. Obviously, we do have huge amounts of sort of security teams and things like that that have to be on site, and that sort of policy is then drawn up separately. But yes, we have a work from home policy first.
Sure, and I think it's I think the majority of organisations are adopting that. I think some have gone to very far extent of 100% mobile working. I'm not sure that's going to work for the majority of organisations, but I think our organisations are quite similar, that, you know, there are some key roles that people will still need multiple access, secure access, dedicated servers, and then again, there'll be the choice as well that people may just choose to actually go in and work from the office. I think after 8 months, I'm missing a little bit. I'm keen to get back, but maybe not every day. Claire, thank you very much. As mentioned, keep the questions coming in chat. I'm going to introduce our next speaker now, but we will revisit the chat as well as we go through the session. So on to our final session, which I'm joined by Stuart. And Stuart, if I could pass to you to share your screen. Stuart's going to take us through what it takes to run the team from first-hand experience, and how we get the best from them. Okay, can I just check, Ant, before you disappear, that you can see the screen? The famous words, can you see my screen? Yes, we've got you, Stuart, thank you. That's good, that's good. Okay, listen, first of all, thanks for the invite. I'm going to jump straight in. So what I'd like to do is share my backstory up to present day. I guess the principles, leadership principles I've learnt and applied, and I guess more importantly, the lessons learnt. So here we go. It's hopefully about 30 minutes. If there's time for questions at the end, obviously I'd welcome them. But as Claire said, if we don't get time, please connect on LinkedIn. I've got 15,000 connections, so a few more would be good. I've got a leadership course as well that I want to talk about at the end, but I can always answer your questions on there. And I've got loads of leadership content on there that's accessible as well. Okay, so backstory, born and raised on a farm in Cumbria. I'm the blonde one there, big brother Stephen beside me. Went to a independent school on the west coast of Cumbria. General studies wasn't my strong point. If there was an exam in sports studies, I might have done a bit better, but it was A-levels at the time. I managed to do better than my general studies A-level, to be fair. And I got myself to university, went to Leeds, did a sports science degree, and that led to a PGCE and a teaching career from 92 to 2000. So I loved it. I loved teaching. Learned a huge amount about motivation of pupils and working in teams, getting the best out of people, and genuinely loved it. The game of rugby went professional in '95, and I actually got injured in 2000, and that led into an academy job that came up at my club that I played, Leeds. So my role at school was very much a teaching role with a growing element of leadership. The academy role was probably less coaching, but more leadership and more management, certainly more strategic. And this is part of the theme I want to talk about in terms of my leadership lessons. I was put on a level 5 coaching course when I was 32, and that was held at Ashridge Business School. So I'd done my rugby qualifications, if you like, up until that point, but this was a leadership and management one, and I'd always gravitated to leadership positions without really understanding the theory of leadership or appreciating that leadership is a skill that can be learnt. And I learned a huge amount on that course, and that opened the doors for me to continue to try and grow and develop my own leadership from that point onwards. In 2005, the head coach of the club I was at resigned, and I took over as a head coach, which was a team just been relegated from the Premiership and trying to get promoted back into the Premiership. So again, in terms of proportions, it was very much a leadership managerial role. Yes, so I'm in a tracksuit there, and there were elements of coaching in it, but it was probably a good balance of all three. And again, I loved that role. We managed to get promoted back into the Premiership. And then the RFU approached about me joining the union, and the role was head of elite player development, which had no coaching in. So I managed to persuade them in my interview that I'd like to do some coaching with England Saxons. There was only 5 games a year, but the head of elite player development role was very much a role at developing talent pathways within the union, organising the age grade teams, and working and developing the efficiency of the 12 different academies that were centred around the country that's now become 14. So again, a really interesting role. Martin Johnson was the head coach of England at the time, so I learnt a lot from shadowing him and his team.
and an amazing growth really from being a PE teacher less than sort of 5 or 6 years before. And then out the blue, Martin Johnson resigned after the World Cup in 2011, and I went to the board and said, you know, why don't I hold the fort for the Six Nations 2012? And they went with it. I was trying to think what to say there. No, they went with it, and they gave me the opportunity, and they interviewed me for the main job alongside 4 or 5 other coaches. Unfortunately, in that 2012 Six Nations, we won 4 games out of 5. The last game being against Ireland, ironically, which is obviously where I am now. So I got the job full time, and the coaching team there was the England coaching team at the time. So Graham Rowntree, who's now at Munster, Andy Farrell, head coach of Ireland now, myself, obviously coaching at Leinster, and Mike Catt, who's now assistant coach of Ireland. So all 4 of us are now gone from England to Ireland, ironically. And again, I put here director of rugby. You know, yes, I'm in a tracksuit, but again, this was a really big strategic role. Both not just within the team of the England senior team, but within the academy system, the culture environment of the RFU, and I'll talk about some of the challenges that I faced and how I tried to overcome them when I took on the role. I was also the head of international player development, so I kept that role. And again, you know, this is me actually for those people who are there from O2. You know, very appreciative of the support companies like O2 gave me at the time, to the extent we actually had a send-off event for those who might remember it at the O2 Arena in 2015 in the lead up to the World Cup. So this was something that was way, way beyond, you know, coaching a rugby team, and, you know, working with commercial partners, working with the media, working with the governing body itself, working with the grassroots fans, the council of the RFU, etc., etc., etc. So it was a big and complex role for me. And yeah, I say we had this amazing event that led into the World Cup. So we had, you know, people obviously. There's a book called The Power of Moments, actually, which I'd recommend, and it talks about people's memories of occasions are defined by the peak and the end. And obviously for me, the peak was always going to be the World Cup in 2015. But that said, we had like 40 or 50 games before then. We won a good 70% with a really young team. But the peak moment was to come for me, and obviously it was the World Cup in 2015. Unfortunately, the end moment was a loss against Wales in a game that we were winning quite comfortably, and we end up losing through a variety of different reasons. And then we played Australia and lost against Australia, who played very well on the day and went on to get to the final. But the Wales game was the one really, and ultimately for me personally, it was the end for my time at the RFU, which again was devastating for me, obviously personally and professionally, but obviously for the country to have not done better. And I still, you know, wear that scar now. You know, I think about it all the time, and it was very tough for me and obviously the family as well. I also felt a responsibility for coaches, particularly young English coaches in the system. I'll play this clip here on the audio, which is from this book, Mensch, Beyond the Curtains, which talk about Jurgen Klopp, who's the current Liverpool manager, and the German Federation taking a chance on him and what that meant.
There is a price to pay for it all. What is important about Klopp's appointment was that the gamble paid off. There is certainly a case to be made that had Klopp not been successful at Mainz, Germany's coaching landscape might look a little different now.
And I certainly feel, obviously, you know, they took a gamble on me, and I felt, you know, right until the very end, we were on the right track. And I look at the England team now, who've gone on to, you know, World Cup final in 2019, and all the young players I capped that have gone on to be successful, that we were on the right track. But because it didn't play out, I hope it doesn't damage the hopes of other young England coaches to get their opportunity in the future. So obviously it was a challenging time. I decided to go and go to the Southern Hemisphere to get out of the country, if I'm being honest, and to get away from, you know, the memories of everything. And I went and coached in New Zealand, which was fantastic. And then out of the blue, Leo Cullen approached me and I took over as senior coach, but effectively in a head coaching role here in Leinster in September 2016, and here I am still here. And again, going back to the proportions of the role, I'd say very lucky that Leo's very good at the managerial side of things. Guy used to be very good at it, who's also the general manager. So it frees me up now to coach and lead at the same time, and less of the managerial responsibility. And I guess thinking back to the England role, perhaps the size of the managerial roles meant I got squeezed at either end. And I guess if I had my time again, I definitely would have delegated some things more. That's for sure. So Leinster is a values-based organisation. It's a values-based team. It's a very successful team, which I'll come on to. And we drive our behaviours through the 3 values, which you can see at the bottom there. And I truly believe that if you've got a good values-based organisation, that you actually live the values properly, then it gives you, a direction with which to go. And again, you talk about, listening to Anton, Claire there talking about the COVID world that we're in. It's definitely helped us at Leinster to be able to have that. And now we're lucky that we're back together as a team, but we had a long period where we weren't, and we could use the values to drive those behaviours, which kept us connected. And I'm again lucky that we've gone on and achieved success. So we won the European Cup in 2018 and the Pro 14, so we did the double. We won the Pro 14 in 2019 and 2020. We lost the European Cup final in 2019, so we failed at the double. But it's a very, very successful team. We've been unbeaten in 25 games now in the Pro 14, and it's a really great place to work. I'm age 50, so I feel this is in Dublin. For those that know Temple Bar, that was the start of the night actually. And a lot of family and friends came over from Leeds and then England. Obviously, all the players came out as well, actually, which was amazing for all the family and friends who were rubbing shoulders with internationals. So I feel like I've got a lot of lessons that I've learned that I want to share. So I'll go through them now, and like I say, hopefully you can take things from them. So when I took over England, these were the main issues. And I want to talk about what I was going through my mind at the time, and how I was going to try and rectify some things. Now, clearly, some things were out of my control. So there was a CEO that was going to get appointed, and the board was beginning to sort themselves out. But it was certainly a difficult situation to take on. So the key thing, obviously, for me was to come in with a plan. Now, the plan clearly is to win a World Cup and win multiple World Cups. But I remember speaking to Andrew Strauss, who's the England cricket coach, captain at the time, and he said our goal was to become #1 in the world. The problem was when we became #1, we sat back and celebrated the moment, and everyone caught us up and overtook us because they've been watching what we were doing. So I think there is something beyond winning, and this is something we talked about. I think we wanted to earn respect back in world sport. I think we wanted continuous, consistent high performance. So those systems and structures from the academies and the clubs would continue supplying England with talent. So England would always be successful. And I'd like to think, those foundations are still in place now. And have a culture and identity running deep through the organisation. Claire talked about this in her presentation, and I think it's key, not only culture, but identity as well, what you stand for and who you work for. And at Leinster, we've got 95% of our players are from Leinster, the province of Leinster. So we have a very strong identity here. We know who we're playing for, and with the trophies behind me, you know who you're representing, who played for the club in the past. So if I was going into any organisation, this is the order of events that I would try and build any team. And it depends on the maturity of the organisation and the I guess the cultural health of the organisation, where you put your most attention. So when I came into Leinster, it was already a strong culture, really good identity. Perhaps need a bit more clarity on the purpose. But what we've really grown in the last 2 or 3 years is the player ownership piece. But you can't get that piece without getting the foundations right. So again, going back to my time in England, it was more about get the culture right, talk about the identity. What does it mean to play for England? And connect the team to the values of the country. Then, you know, as the players matured, and I look at the England team now and I look at the senior leaders in there who are 70, 80, 90 caps. And there you can see obviously, clearly Eddie Jones has done a brilliant job, but also the influence of those senior players who were 20, 21 years old when I took over. So the challenge in any organisation is to win in the here and now and build for the future. I don't think that's easy. You know, this is obviously 3 of Leinster players who play for Ireland, great leaders, future leaders of Ireland. And Andy Farrell's got this challenge at the moment where he's trying to transition out some senior people and bring in some younger players and win at the same time. So this was my time in charge of England. So if you see on the left-hand side, my first game in charge was against Scotland, which is the blue line. And they had 500 caps in their starting 15, and the white line just over 200. That was how many caps we had in our starting 15 in that game. So if you go along the period of my time in charge, 99% of the time we were less experienced than the opposition. The big black lines are obviously New Zealand. You've got South Africa, France, Wales, the red line, etc., etc. But I'd like to think now, if you look at that chart from the last 4 years, you know, England would be upwards of 700, 800. Well, I know there's 700 and 800, and the other teams have had to drop because they've got senior players. So that was the challenge, and I don't regret anything I did in terms of the planning. And I certainly feel that putting culture first and getting that bit right was the right way to go. The easy thing to do is just concentrate on the performance and just win the next game without worrying too much about what the long-term future looks like. But you know, I don't believe that's going to give you long-term success. And I think, you know, building your identity is critical. And obviously, in a Brexit world, and you know, I sit and listen to different rules for Wales and for Scotland, and obviously now here I am in Ireland. We didn't often talk about what it means to be English, and it probably brought it home to me. We played Wales one time in the Millennium. It was for the Grand Slam. And it felt like we were playing against the whole nation. I really wanted to sort of encapsulate that feeling of Englishness within the team. And again, down to the likes of, you know, O2 and Canterbury, they really bought into this. And collectively, we talked about the Wear the Rose campaign and how people should be proud to wear the white shirt. And we created a video about what it means to be English. Now, the video actually was never shown publicly. I'm going to show you a small piece of the video. I still think it should be shown at some point, but obviously, clearly, it has to be done at the right time. But it talks very much about what it means to be English.
I represent my country. I represent England. I represent my family and the sacrifices that they have made for me. I represent those who have guided me. I represent all of our people, those born here and those who have come here to make a better life, all of them looking to this team for inspiration, for proof of what it means to be English.
And we also did a second one again, which hasn't been shown, and again I'll show you a little clip of that, which is more about the team and the hopes and dreams of the players. Going from young rugby players to becoming future internationals. So I'll show you a little clip of that as well. So you get an idea of what was going through my mind at the time about how to build this sense of identity within the team.
What seemed like the blink of an eye, my unspoken dreams led me to the red rose. It was a time of new beginnings. Everything stripped back. The red rose given its voice. We built a special place for us and those that would follow. The
simple truths we learned as boys never changed.
So you obviously get the picture, and it's quite tough to watch for me, but ultimately, like I say, I look back and I feel that we went about things the right way, and ultimately what we wanted to do was to put self-interest to one side, which I think is true of any organisation, and put that cause, for your country at the top, because I think in a more selfish organisation, you only get discretionary effort if you're motivated about what's in it for me, and to create that bigger picture, which I think is part of what great leaders do. So we needed to develop our credibility, and I personally needed to develop my credibility as a leader, because people have to believe in the message to believe in the message. So I based my leadership philosophy around 4 tenets of being honest. Not necessarily inspiring all the time. I don't think that has to be true of all leaders, but I think you have to have inspirational moments. And I think people are inspired if you can think and plan for the future and describe it in detail. That means that they will willingly follow you, not because they're paid to, but because they feel that you represent their values and they believe in your vision. And clearly you need technical excellence. So I spend a lot of my time about how can I be a better coach? How can I understand rugby better? I would struggle obviously to be a leader in a law firm because I wouldn't understand the complexity of it. But so within your world, how can you be better as a leader? How can you be honest with people? How can you inspire people? Always forward think and plan, and obviously be excellent in your knowledge on your role. And again, here are 10 other qualities that I would like to think that I'm striving to achieve as a leader. Be yourself, be a good communicator. I think number 4 is really important, developing a point of view. I think people want a point of view from their leaders. Number 7, do what you say you will do. There's nothing that erodes trust more frequently than promising one thing and then doing another, particularly in a digital world where you have to connect often remotely. And I think just on that, I do think you can communicate emotion and you can communicate connection in a virtual way. I don't think we should use Teams and other vehicles like this just as a mode of passing information. And I think obviously the last one, build belief and make performance meaningful in yourself and others. So you've got to get people to believe that you're going to be a great team. So what have I learned? I think, always think, if you're in a leadership position or you're working in a team, is what's the balance between leadership, coaching and management in your job at the moment. So coaching, substitute coaching for whatever your job is. And I think try and develop yourself to be an expert in all 3. I'll come back to the point. I think leadership is a skill that can be learned, so you can study leadership. Management obviously is a lot to do with your personality and your ability to get the best out of your team. And coaching is that technical excellence. So I think it's important. One of the priorities for me was to really understand my own personality. This is my psychometric profile, which is done through Insights, and there's loads of different ones out there. You can see I'm slightly more to the left side of the wheel than the right, so slightly more introverted. But that doesn't mean, you can see I've got elements of red in my personality, which means I can be that director and show my red side occasionally, which the team saw last week. Or sometimes I can be that inspirational or the extrovert or someone who can go around and connect with people. But predominantly I'm more introverted, which means that I'm quite happy in my own company. I'm quite good on detail. And there's no right or wrong personality. That it's not to say that someone on the other side would be wrong at all. It's more building the right strengths around you to help you with these strengths and help you with your weaknesses also. I think it's also it's important to understand. I think in the current climate, one of the big worries for me is that young people get missed out in this. There's like a black hole of development for young people now. We're just trying to keep our head above water. So we need to grow leadership in our young people so that they become the future leaders of the team. So I wish I'd learned at 22 what I'd learned at 32. And I'll play this little clip now, this audio clip, from a coach called Danny Kerry, who's a hockey coach. And he talks brilliantly about creating space for leadership to grow.
How much space are you creating for people to lead in? So you as the coach might always be stepping into that space and filling that leadership space. So how can you then expect people on the pitch to lead? How much ingenuity do you create in your environment where people by default have to take grip of a situation, have to lead, have to take responsibility and accountability for the decisions they make? And again, your job as the leader of the program is to think about grading that. So not expecting some massive jump in ability and sink or swim, but just providing the right level of opportunities at the right challenge point.
I think it's a really good point about creating space for leadership to grow within your teams, particularly with the young people. I think also, if you're asking me what makes great teams, I'd say cohesion is king. So one of the advantages that we have this homegrown team who know each other well. The way in which we train, the way in which we practice, we develop cohesion. So when the pressure comes on in big games, we can hold our nerve. Also, if the team changes, we can still be equally effective. So I think developing cohesion is really important in successful teams. But also, so is diversity. And the reason I got this slide up is because on the left of the picture, you've got Felipe Contepomi from Argentina. You've got Robbie McBride from Wales, who's worked with Warren Gatland for the last 12 years. We've got Johnny O'Hagan, who's the kit man in the middle, who's probably the most important man anyway in the organisation. Myself from England, and obviously what I've learned with England, and Leo Cullen from Ireland. So that sense of diversity in an organisation, so you get a real mix of opinions, is really important. And there's a good book on it, Diversity, that Matthew Syed wrote, and I picked up this audio on a podcast that he was speaking on, which I will play now.
The most interesting thing I think I found from the book is when you optimize the right kind of diversity in the right kind of way, the uplift in what I call the collective intelligence of groups is monumental. And I think the next 50 years is going to be dominated by the competitive advantage that is established by those institutions, those governments, those societies that understand diversity.
So, I think, again, Claire mentioned in her presentation, it is so important to get people's views from all sorts of backgrounds, and this is the perfect time to do it. Clearly, bringing talent through is integral to me. I've been brought up as a teacher, as an academy manager, and I truly believe in young people, and they never let you down if you give them the chance. And I want to play this clip here. This is Pep Linders, who works for Liverpool. He works under Jurgen Klopp. If you ever listen to any of his press conferences, he is, a future manager, absolutely guaranteed. He always talks sense, and he talks here about Liverpool's philosophy about bringing talent through and how and why it happens so effectively.
And then, if you want to bring players through it, the most important thing that there's hope. You can coach really well, you can do things, everything right, but if the first team staff doesn't create hope for the young players who are in the academy, then it becomes really difficult. And think about yourself in the part where if you see somebody who made it, say Trent or Kurt, that gives indirect influence to all these young boys in the academy because they see the pathway. And then it's important that we give them the trust as a first team staff to get them early with us, so not when they are 21, 22, 23, but that when they are 16, 17, 18 and proper talents, that they're already training with us, that they feel that the style of play is not new, that that relationship is there between the academy and the first team, that they don't have to play in a different way, that counter-pressing, for example, is completely natural already. And all these small things will help the players to establish themselves into the squad. The most important thing is Jurgen, who gives this hope to the players and gives this trust to the young players, and that relationship is key in terms of development. So
many good messages in there. the manager giving the young people hope and giving them the opportunity, bringing them into the environment early, training them, coaching them. Again, if you're asking me, what do I think the great teams of the future look like? They'll be connected from the youngest person to the most senior person in the organisation, and there's that cohesion and that mindset that we're going to bring talent through, and we're going to develop homegrown talent, which will take our company to the next level. And I think, again, coming back to organisations, people pay lip service, I think, to boards. I know it seems a strange thing to say, but we spend all our time in teams or whatever, you know, at below board level, creating cohesion. But the most important thing is that the people at the top of the organisation, the very top of the organisation, that they're cohesive, that they've got a clear vision, that they're absolutely rock solid in terms of their values and beliefs and the culture of the organisation, and they work as a collective together. And sometimes I don't see that, for being honest. And I think you also need good processes in place for good decision making. When pressure comes on, how do you review performance? It's certainly something that I've had to learn to do as a coach every week, because we play a game. So the final couple of points, I'm probably slightly over, but hopefully you're still online. Understanding the performance clock. So I've got two Leinster players here who've left. And going back to the football analogy, why were Manchester United successful for so long? Because when they were at their peak, Alex Ferguson made change before change was needed. So he would move a manager, assistant coach, sorry, he would move a senior player out, he would bring a young player in. So if you imagine the life cycle of your team as a clock face, and a team at its lowest points is 6 o'clock, and a team at its peak, we're winning European Cups, is at 12 o'clock. The trick is to obviously move your team up towards 12 o'clock, but then stay there when you get there. And you need to make sure change is done before it's too late, because otherwise, if you keep going long, and the cricket analogy, the Andrew Strauss one, then suddenly you're down at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and you're back to square one, everyone gets sacked, and you have to start the whole cycle again. So it's a really important concept to understand. The other point about staying ahead is staying in the blue. So this is from a company called Gazing, who would do work in sport and business, actually, about how when pressure comes on, we go to red head. So on the left there, where we're thinking about, I can't believe that's just happened, i.e. something in the past, or what the consequence of that happening means something's going to happen in the future, rather than being clear and staying in the moment, staying in the blue. And it happens in teams all the time when pressure comes on. You know, we concede a goal or concede a try, and that you can see the players almost thinking, I can't believe that's happened, and we might lose this game now, rather than staying in the moment and staying on task. And it's a really good skill to recognise in other people as well. There's a great quote someone said to me recently: if you spend all your time looking in your rear view mirror when you're driving, you'll crash. And if you're always driving in fog and you've got no clear vision of where you're going, you'll crash also. So stop looking too much in the rear view mirror, and clear your vision about where you're going in the future. And sometimes you lose, and part of being a leader is being on the rocky road. I mean, I wouldn't recommend my rocks, but everyone has them, and you've got to dig in and learn and use failure as a school for success. It happens in sport all the time, and sometimes it can be the making of you. And I'll show you this final video before I wrap it up, which will bring this to life.
Strange way, it was a painful gift, because it made us draw near to what really mattered. You know, on the court, it's the closest we've been. Off the court, the things that matter, because everybody comes at you in different ways, and it kind of forces you to know what you're about. But these guys, we talked about it. It's a quote from a TED talk we gave along, showed them to them. If it's a saying about adversity, if you learn to use it right, it'll buy you a ticket to a place you couldn't have gone any other way. And all we went through prepared us for this game, this setting.
It can buy you a ticket to go to a place you couldn't have gone to any other way. So this was a basketball coach who were favourites to win the previous year and got knocked out by the 45th ranked team, and then the following year used that adversity for success in the championship. So one of the phrases we use at Leinster when we've done our review, we've learned from a game, is we call it sumo, shut up and move on, because you can't drag it around. You've got to take the learning and move on. We do it on a weekly basis in sport. And the other reason this guy's pitches up, who's Wayne Bennett, who's a rugby league coach, is when I went to Australia after the World Cup, he said, Stuart, I'll give you one bit of advice. Wherever you go next, make sure you 100% want to go there and they 100% want you to come. And I think that's been the best advice I was given, hence the reason I'm at Leinster. So I think always want to improve. I think if you've got that growth mindset, as already been mentioned on the call, is key. Juggle the 3 balls well. So the 3 balls are your personal health and well-being, your family, and your job. And you've got to keep all 3 in the air. You know, what good is it if you drop one and it smashes? So, and put yourself on this line and decide where you want to be. There's nothing wrong with savouring life, but I guess if you really push me, I'd probably be more to the right of the line than left. But I'm definitely learned, particularly having gone through the challenges of coaching England and everything that happened. I definitely want to get the balance right in my life. And the final 2 slides are, let's make sure we enjoy life, but let's not be afraid to take some risks, because we want to leave a mark and leave a legacy, and that's very much what drives me. And that's, you know, I've got a leadership course here where I've got loads of stuff. I've got all my LinkedIn, so stuartlancaster.com if you're interested in signing up for that. But equally, just for yourself personally, you know, obviously for me, I think if everyone had that really positive mindset about life, we would solve a lot of problems. Okay, that's me, Anne.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much for that brilliant presentation. I think there's a couple of things that many of us will have scribbled down on our pads as we went through that. I think for me, it was culture comes before performance. Getting that connection across the teams, I think, is absolutely essential as well. And I think sumo is something that everyone will have scribbled down, I'm sure. That's something we should all probably live by. And I think it's important as well, as we do look at our well-being in this current climate as well. You know, where are we on that journey of work-life balance, and, you know, savouring life and making a mark as well. So I think that's really important. We're out of time, but there is one question which has come through on chat from Gary, which I think is a brilliant question, and I think it'd be great to hear your thoughts. So the question is it easier to lead when you're in a challenging position, or is it easier to lead a team when you're defending a position?
I think there are gold moments that come along as a leader that you can't plan for, and they're the ones you need to absolutely nail. I think coming into the challenging position of coaching England as a young coach and everything that needed to be done, in some ways, I felt I had nothing to lose. And I guess also because I was the interim coach at the time, you know, I really could set about it in maybe a different way. So maybe that freed me up to do something that I wouldn't have done ordinarily. So that probably gave me the confidence, I guess, but also the confidence because the board gave me the confidence, but also I guess I felt confident because I'd done the work. I felt I knew what needed to be done. I was part of the organisation for a number of years. I felt I knew English rugby. But also, I don't think leadership's easy at any point, if I'm being honest. I think it's lonely sometimes, and I think it's tough. But it is ultimately so rewarding when you see people grow and achieve their potential, and you see teams succeed. You know, that's the best moment when you're in the changing room after the game and you've won a trophy or you've won a game and you've really seen young people deliver, and you've got a beer in your hand and the music's playing, and you just think, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, you can go on your holidays and have a beer and enjoy it, and then go and do it all over again. Because I think if we can develop more leaders, let's say, I truly believe leadership is good we learned, then we'll be a better place in society and the world.
Absolutely. Stuart, inspiring words. Thank you ever so much. That's really useful. Great presentation, and best of luck for the future with that as well. Claire, thank you also for your thoughts and opinions. There's been a number of questions that have come through in chat, too many for us to get through today, so we'll continue to answer those. As Stuart mentioned, reach out to him on LinkedIn. Same applies to me and Claire. We'd love to hear from you. That virtual coffee is brewing, ready when you are. But thanks ever so much for making the time out today. Hope the session's been useful, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.